Hey there, Rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you my deck profile for Blessing of Funf. Let's go ahead and jump right in.
This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for products, and fowlibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists.
As well as our guest lecturer members King Pearlshine, Vite Ramen, Mognite, and Darren Noblock.
Class is in session.
So this is the deck list out the gate. You can see that we're not using a lot of the Blessing resonators. In fact, we're not using any of them. And the main reason for that is outside of the demon, who just doesn't need to have Blessing himself, but just wants you to have things with Blessing. There's a lot of really good spot removal in this format, and so the idea of wasting my one Blessing per turn on a resonator that could just get killed in response feels mediocre. So I'm mainly honestly using Blessing in this mechanic for something like Age of Death when it comes up, as well as just to make Imaginary God of the Fallen cheaper. It does really work well when I do get to Unknown Mother Goose to be able to kind of stack up multiple on her and make her very, very large, make this Chronogear very, very large, and to make it so that I can't lose the game. But really, we're just kind of like using Blessing as a way to build progressive value so that we start slamming down multiple Imaginary Gods of the Fallen once per turn, twice per turn, just for like 1 to 2 will, which can be a lot of value. So we're using Moonchildren Rulers. I started with this deck playing the green Child instead of Child of Death, but I've come to see that in the first version, when you don't know what you're playing up against, Child of Death is just inherently better. Lets us buy back things like a Lucifer that gets killed, or a Dark Alice, or just has a lot, or a God of the Fallen. Let's just generate a lot of value and kind of buy back things that are important. We also are playing Child of Famine because the +1/+1 counters are just great in general, and it makes our Ataractius Moria a red-white source, or a black-white source. Going into the deck, we're playing 3 copies of Age of Death. Now, we can stack multiple instances of Blessing on this, and it does come up where we have like a -6 on our opponent's board. Mainly, we're using it because it's a 1-cost addition that we can force our opponent to discard a card, which is great because we're playing Keep the Fates. So Keep the Fates lets us reanimate it at instant speed, so we have like another form of instant speed discard, which is great. We're also doing the same thing with Castle Alvarez. This is the same kind of stat neg, but it also generates us some bodies on field, which is really, really nice. To be able to keep ourselves protected, especially from flyers in the early game. Then we're also playing 4 copies of Blessing of Darkfeather to be able to manipulate Blessing a lot more, as well as kill problem cards. 4 copies of Imaginary God of the Fallen, 3 copies of Summon the Dragon of Death. I'm only playing 3. 4 felt too many. I will say, though, I have been playing more, and sometimes just doing this contract knowing that you're not going to destroy anything just to put Unknown Mother Goose onto the field against some decks, that's just a big problem for them, and so sometimes it's just worth it, especially since Funf can pay for this with Mastery, which is kind of insane. 3 copies of Thought Conversion to just truly rip our opponent's hands to shreds, especially in a way that removes them from the game, is very, very nice. 2 copies of Memory of Worlds for that additional protection and cancel kind of shenanigans. 3 copies of Lucifer because, again, it's life gain, it's discard, it's taking our opponent's resources away while protecting ourselves. 2 copies of Magic Stone Research Institute because we don't play a lot of resonators, and so making them bigger is usually very helpful, as well as being able to mess with the graveyard. Now, a neat note here is the Starfall and the Dark Alice. This is a cool interaction that I think you'll start to see in a lot of different decks. Starfall can generate multiple Comets that whenever they leave the field or go to the graveyard, you draw a card. And Dark Alice can sacrifice things that you control instead of discarding a card after a response to her draw. So if you have 2 Comets and you flash in Dark Alice, you can draw 2, sack 2 of the Comets, and then draw 2 more. So you essentially paid 1 will at quick cast to draw 4 cards. It is a little bit of investment over time, but Starfall himself is also just a good pressure body that this deck can play pretty easily. That's a little engine that you'll probably see a lot in any deck that we are kind of maining white in on the channel here moving forward. 3 copies of Killua, Fossil Girl in the City, just for some additional cancel and destruction of additions. And then lastly, some sealed One-Eye Dragons, because we are playing the Moonshades, and we do have life gain, so the idea of like being able to reanimate this over and over again for some additional pressure to close out games, especially if our opponent's in top deck mode, and we can't find our Dark Alices, is nice. So that is the list. I'm curious to see how you guys are building Funf, so let us know in the link in the deck list comment area down below. You can also find a link to this deck list in the description below. And until next time, this is GMO73 saying class dismissed.